I'm Courtney. We're a family of 5 trying to grow as much of our own food as we can, and we raise chickens. Our kids wanted to name our little backyard farm, so we did. It's called Heart Pine Farms. We've been learning over the past 10 years how to grow the most sweet corn we can in our 4x8 raised beds. Gardening is a constant trial and error learning experience every day, and so far these are the planting methods that have been working for us. This year we planted our corn a month ago, which was late for us. This is what our corn looks like right now, about a couple of feet tall. We'll show you how we go about planting our corn in our raised beds and the simple things we do to give it a strong start, leading to great harvests. We want to mention that we planted pole beans in the edges of our corn beds, which is something we do every year. Here are the reasons why we plant beans next to our corn and our thoughts about nitrogen fixing capabilities. Will growing beans next to corn help it grow by giving nitrogen back to the soil? Here's what we think based on our experiences and research. We grow pole beans next to our corn because there's space at the edge of the bed, also saving garden space as the beans grow on the trellis we made out of cattle panel. Some of the corn plants also support the bean plants as they spread and grow. These are the reasons we plant our beans and corn together. As for the beans giving nitrogen back to the garden, we don't think it makes a difference while they're growing next to the corn. Most of the nitrogen converted by the bean plants won't be available while they're growing because the roots have to break down to release the nitrogen. In other words, the bean plants have to die to release the stored nitrogen as they decompose. Even then, we don't think it's very much nitrogen because they've already produced beans that we've harvested. Following our edible crops, we plant cover crops that we mow down right before they go to seed. The plants have nitrogen stored to produce the seeds, so when they're killed at the right time and decompose, that's when the most nitrogen is given back to the garden. We use cover crops like field peas and vetch for nitrogen fixing. It's June and we're finally out here planting our corn in our raised beds, and we're going to plant 6 raised beds of corn this year, which is what we do every year. The only difference is this year we're planting a lot later than usual. We usually plant like in April or May. Here in Zone 7B, we should have enough time to have a good harvest, so we're planting anyway. Each raised bed yields about 90 ears of corn, and of course we eat a lot of it fresh. We also like to can our corn to use in recipes and as meal sides, and that'll get us through about a year. So 6 raised beds, 90 ears of corn, and each one about a year's worth of corn. To prepare the soil for planting, I just added 2 to 3 inches of compost right on top of the soil, and that gets watered in and feeds the soil, and that's essentially the fertilizer that we use every time we plant something in our garden. We swear by compost. Corn is a bit of a heavy feeder though, so we have to make sure it has enough nitrogen. When the corn is about a foot high, I will side dress with this biofish fertilizer. It's down to earth biofish fertilizer. I'll put a link in the description in case you're interested. I just take it and I sprinkle it in between each row of corn, and then it gets watered in, and then I do it one more time when the corn is tasseling. So we're planting Mirage sweet corn, and we also like to grow Who Gets Kissed sweet corn. Those are our 2 favorite sweet corn varieties that we've been growing every single year. Now, because we're planting 2 different varieties, I'm gonna stagger them a little bit. Today we're gonna plant 3 beds of Mirage sweet corn, and then 1 to 2 weeks later we're gonna plant 3 beds of Who Gets Kissed corn. So if you stagger the plantings like that, plant one variety and then plant another variety later, they're gonna be tasseling at different times, and then they're not gonna cross-pollinate. The good thing about corn, growing it in raised beds, is you can share the space. So you can see that we have a trellis right here. We're going to be planting beans right here along the edge of this raised bed, and they're just going to climb up the trellis and over. So our rows are ready here. I'm just going to plant 1 seed every 8 inches. We used to do 2 seeds every 8 inches, and we ended up thinning every single one. We get really good germination success with this Mirage sweet corn that we get from high mowing organic seeds. So in our own experience, we've had good enough success that we're confident enough to just put 1 seed every 8 inches. And I usually plant corn seeds about 1 inch deep. Okay, I'm gonna water it in. It's pretty dry out here right now. We could use some rain, but I'm using the hose until germination, and then when the plants start to take off, that's when we install our drip irrigation. The drip irrigation is the way that we have found works the best to keep the plants consistently watered. Another thing I also do is when the plants take off, I put pine straw mulch in between each row. And we use pine straw just because it's easy to get here, and we've used it for the past 10 years with success, and we found that it doesn't affect the pH of our soil. It helps keep weeds out, and it also helps the soil retain moisture. You can really use any kind of natural mulch that you can get your hands on. One thing that we're doing this year right away is we're putting stakes up in each corner of the raised bed with a cup right here to hold bird netting up. And we're doing that right away because last year we lost all of our corn to birds and we had to replant just about all of it. So we're starting that right off the bat. It's just really simple. You just put a stake in each corner and then put a cup here, and that helps hold the netting up. And then when the plants get to be at least 6 inches high, that's when I remove the netting. I haven't really liked using netting in the past, and it was a last resort as a bird deterrent. The netting would always tear, and it was difficult to fold it up and store it for future use, and I like to use things like this year after year. I like this netting because it's a heavier weight and has reinforced edges, which makes it easier to work with. I put a link to it in the description so you can read more about it if you would like. This photo was taken last year just after the side dressing with the biofish fertilizer. The corn plants really start to grow more rapidly after that point. You can also see how the bed is mulched well, which really helps in the summer heat and dry stretches that can happen. Here's a view of how we use soaker hoses to water the corn. We removed the mulch so you can look closely and see how the hoses are placed so they wrap around the rows of corn. The corn needs to be deeply and consistently watered, and for us, soaker hoses work well in the raised beds. If it doesn't rain, running the soaker hoses for an hour will water the corn about 1/4 inch, which is what we do every day. That has shown to be the right amount of water for the corn we grow in our raised beds. You can experiment and research about this for your growing zone and garden beds, but on average, corn needs 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week. Planting corn tightly in blocks in short rows has worked well for us because it's easy for wind pollination to occur for the corn this way. It also makes it easy for us to stake the corn so it's not taken down by high winds. When we grow corn in our raised bed garden, we don't have a large field of it with row upon row all protecting each other from the wind. Our blocks of corn are more vulnerable when sudden high winds happen. This is how we stake the corn using metal fence posts and strong twine. We tie the twine to the stakes and stretch it between the rows to support the corn plants. You can see it in action here when a sudden windstorm came up. I think growing sweet corn is one of the most satisfying crops to grow in the home garden because it can provide a lot of delicious food you can trust to be organically grown if you choose, and you can choose the harvest time so you can have the freshest, most delicious corn. With store-bought corn, you can't achieve that because the sugars in the corn have had time to convert to starches, affecting the flavor. These are all of our experiences from the past 10 years of growing corn in our raised beds, and of course we're still learning every year. We're excited to share them with you now to help empower you wherever you are in your food growing journey.